Hello and welcome to Software Testing Interview Preparation. Here I would like to share a lot of tips and tricks to prepare you for interviews and how to make self-presentation better so it will be easier for you to get your dream job in software testing field. I have a lot of experience in interviewing candidates for many roles in testing, especially automation, and I also have discussed this topic with many recruiters to put together a simple but effective guide to stand out in interviews. Trust me, a few simple and easy steps can make a big difference. I have divided these lessons into 3 separated topics. First is self-presentation, where we discuss how to make your CV stand out, how to build strong online presence to attract potential companies and recruiters, and of course, how to showcase your skills online even before the interview process begins. Second is general testing knowledge. Here we will discuss all the important topics you must know even for more junior positions. I believe many of you already know a lot of these topics, so this part should be fairly easy and straightforward. Then we take a look on some commonly used software tools and also discuss some skills you should have or try to learn before you apply for more senior level positions. Last section is finally about coding and automation. Here we will talk about programming languages, what is important to learn and have knowledge about. Then we dive deeper into frameworks and design patterns. These are very important must-know topics for all the test automation positions. And then we take a look on topics such as databases and APIs, which are essential skill for every tester that he should know at least on the basic concepts level. Let's start with part 1, which is how to make your online presence better. First, very important thing is to have your CV designed and created properly, because you have to make instant good first impression on the recruiter who will take a look at your CV. Remember, companies get a lot of CVs from many candidates for most of the positions, including software testing and automation. So you have to make sure your CV will instantly tell, yes, this candidate has a big potential, so let's take a closer look at him. To make this possible, your CV must be maximum of 2 pages, but 1 page is always the best option. From the experience, recruiters will not spend time looking at 5 pages of CV full of detailed information. So make sure that you put only the most important information about your experience and skills, which will make a good first impression. Typically, you highlight your last 2 up to 3 jobs, which should be the most relevant to the software testing. No need to put your older jobs which are not testing or programming related. This is a common mistake many people do, and it makes their CV large and full of non-relevant information, which does not make a good impression on the recruiters. So the key lesson here is to always focus on the most relevant and the recent experience and skills. Another must-have thing to do is to link your LinkedIn and GitHub profiles to your CV. Let me explain why this is a very important part of the CV. Let's start with the LinkedIn profile. As you already know, LinkedIn is a social network which connects professionals, companies, and recruiters. This is the place where you can write detailed information about you, your work experience, and your skills. This is why you should keep your CV as minimalistic as possible, because when you make a good first impression with your CV and the recruiter is interested in you, they will most likely go and spend some time reading the detailed information about you on your LinkedIn. And if you include it to your CV, then they can access it with 1 click and no need to search for it. Again, you make it easier for them, so it makes a better impression of you as candidate. Your LinkedIn profile should contain information about your technical skills, your working history, where you should explain what have you done in each of the companies you used to work for, what technology did you use, and highlight your best achievements. Also, try to get some references from your former colleagues, which gives you much more credibility and again boosts your chances to get to the on-site interview. Final, but I can say the most important part of your online presence is your GitHub account. This is the place where you can showcase your technical skills, your programming knowledge, and much more. So always include a link to your GitHub account to your CV, but of course your GitHub account should not be empty. You should create at least 2 or 3 personal public projects and upload the source code to the GitHub. My advice is to create one full stack project where you create a simple front end using React or Vue.js and a simple backend. Again, it can be done in JavaScript, Java or Python. After that, try to write some unit tests and add few simple end-to-end tests using your favorite framework such as Cypress or Playwright. It can be done on simple application. You just want to show you can code. You are not trying to get some senior Java developer position, but still always focus on the best programming principles and design of the code. After that, create some purely testing projects. Choose any online application and automate some scenarios using again some of the popular automation frameworks such as Selenium, Playwright or Cypress. Here, it is very important to focus on solid and clean code and showcase the best design patterns and principles of testing and programming. So let's summarize what we have learned here. Always make your CV maximum up of 2 pages and always focus on the most important information. You should include your LinkedIn and GitHub account links to your CV. LinkedIn profiles is the place where you can write very detailed information about your work experience, skills and achievements. Last but not least is to create a few simple projects where you showcase your programming and testing skills and upload that on your GitHub account so the recruiters can see it. Let's now take a look at the second section of the first part, and that is know your company. Basically, what this means is you should do your research and homework before you try to join to any company. Most important part is to research what kind of projects is the company working on, what technologies they use, and in your case specifically, how does testing work inside that company, what frameworks they use, so you can personalize your interview preparation to get the job there. Typically, a company which is heavily focused on Selenium and Java stack will prefer to get a candidate who is also skilled and interested to work with Selenium and Java, and not something like Puppeteer with Cucumber, for example using Python most of the time. So, if you get this information in advance, you can prepare for that, learn those skills, and showcase that you are capable of working with that stack. Also, very important is to know your company culture. For example, if you know that your target company prefer on-site work and not remote work, you should embrace it. That you also prefer to work on-site and not remotely. All of these small points will add up and make you a very suitable candidate compared to other people who does not do their research. So they will most likely not fit up perfectly to the company profile. Another important part is networking and references. The best way to get inside any company is to get insider recommendation, where the more important is that person to the company, the more serious will be the recommendation. So try to get a friend and meet the people from your target company. Try to visit events or meetups. These are the best ways to get your recommendations. So besides your coding and technical preparation for interviews, try to do as many networking as possible you can. You never know when or where you meet someone who can bring a lifetime opportunity to you. So don't be shy. Welcome to the second part of the test interview preparation tips and tricks. Here I want to talk about testing knowledge, which you should know before you apply to any testing job. Many interview questions might be coming from these topics, so it's very important to be prepared for them. First topic is testing concepts. What is meant by that? You should be able to explain various areas of testing and their differences. Very common question can be to explain the differences between functional and non-functional testing, and providing some examples and maybe some tools for that in case of automation. So definitely start with learning all these testing concepts and how to apply them in the real world. Some other very common questions can be explain the black box testing, or explain the process of exploratory testing for new features, or my favorite, explain how would you end-to-end test a payment processing software. So try to practice testing flows of multiple different use cases, such as user creation or files upload and many more, along with thinking about edge cases. And try to be creative, but also effective in the way how would you test those things. Then you should learn about agile development and processes. Nowadays, many companies are trying to work or adapt to agile development. For you as a developer, there is not that much you need to learn about this, but you should definitely know at least how Scrum or Kanban works, how working in a sprint work, how does refinement or planning work inside Agile development teams. I can recommend you to watch some Agile learning presentations or have a quick chat with some of your friends or coworkers who are working as Agile coaches or Scrum Masters. This knowledge will definitely help you, especially when trying to get into smaller companies and startups. They will most likely be working in Agile environment. Next, we have types of testing, which is very similar to the first point of testing concepts. But it is very important to understand all of the testing types and their differences. You should be able to easily explain the difference between unit, integration, end-to-end, or visual regression testing, providing some examples or reasons why you would choose to cover a specific code with unit tests and not end-to-end tests, etc. I believe for many of you this will be a very easy topic, but it is very important to understand all the basics very well if you want to make a good impression on the recruiters during the interview process. Next, we have test cases and analytics. This one can be a very hard area to master, because you just cannot learn it from the books or tutorials. You get the knowledge with experience and many solved and created test cases. You need to be good at understanding the requirements and providing solid test cases, being able to analyze what needs to be tested, how it needs to be tested, what are the edge cases, and much more. I can recommend you learning this at home by simply trying to think how would you test some real-world stuff. This can be, for example, a washing machine. Try to think how would you test it, which test cases make sense and which you can avoid, because in the real world you have to also think about performance and optimization. Like I said, this can take time to learn and master, but it will become easier with new experience from actually creating and thinking about the test cases itself. Last but not least, we have bugs. Well, this is it. As a tester, your primary role will be to find and discover bugs and providing feedback on the code and the application functionality. The better you will be in finding those bugs, the bigger value you will have for the company and development of their software. So you have to focus on this area a lot, because bugs found in development can save tons of money compared to if they are discovered by customers in production. So try to practice exploratory testing and learn about bugs from other companies or software. So you will have the common knowledge in the areas which can cause a lot of problems and bugs in the code. Also make sure you know how to report a bug, how to fill a ticket, or how to explain this in easy way so developer who will work on fixing it will have all the information he needs to solve it fast. Some tips can be always create a screenshot or even videos where you replicate the bug or the problem. Add logs to the bug ticket and learn how to explain complicated things in a very simple way, which is easy to understand. Let's now move on another very important topics to learn as tester or test automation engineer if you want to succeed in the interview process. Typically, you should have at least small experience with communication tools such as Microsoft Teams or Slack, and also at least the basic knowledge of Microsoft Office such as Word, Excel or PowerPoint for doing a simple presentations for the management. Next, we have DevTools protocol, and this one is specifically important for test automation engineers. You must have a good knowledge on inspecting websites and searching for selectors, from basics such as classes, IDs or XPaths to more complex selectors where you need to put together a combination. It is very recommended to practice this a lot during your preparations. Second, you should be able to use network tab in the DevTools protocol, just to observe what API calls have been done, trace some errors, you name it. Again, it is very important part of test automation, so don't forget to learn about that. Finally, we have some tracking and management tools where you should be able to create tickets, create bug reports, and maybe see some data analytics. Typically, this can be tools like Jira or Datadog for the monitoring and analytics. Next, we have senior roles. Well, here I will give you some quick tips for those who are trying to prepare for interview of more senior or even QA lead roles. Generally, if you apply for this kind of job, you should be pretty experienced. But let's quickly recap some of the most important stuff that many recruiters are looking for. First, you definitely need to showcase your ability for leadership. You will be most likely responsible for mentoring of more junior team members, so you should know how to behave and showcase how proper leader should work and drive his team. Part of the leadership skills is also in planning and management of work, tickets, test automation, and generally, you will be responsible that all of this is working correctly. So maybe try to take some management courses to learn the soft and hard skills required for this kind of job. Don't take this one lightly. So welcome to part 3 of the interview preparation tips and tricks. And finally, we will talk about coding and automation. First base ground topic is programming and programming languages. For most of the testing roles, you will need one of these 3 languages: JavaScript, Java, Python, or eventually TypeScript. Well, technically it does not matter which programming language you learn, as long as you understand all the concepts and remember that you are looking for not the developer role, so you will not be building robust backend systems or something like that. You need to focus on understanding the coding practices such as functions, loops, classes, especially coding standards such as object-oriented programming, classes, code optimization, and especially how to write a clean code. Very often you will be working with automation framework such as Playwright or Cypress, which already have some predefined best practices and architectures. We will talk about that in the next slide. But the best idea for you is to practice as many programming problems as possible, so you will have a good understanding of all these basics and be able to showcase them on specific examples. And again, it doesn't matter which programming language you choose, but remember, most of the automation frameworks are using JavaScript or eventually TypeScript as their main options. Of course, for tools such as Playwright, there are versions for Java, Python, or C#, but honestly, I have never seen many companies using something else besides JavaScript or Python. I know there are some companies using C# stacks, and in those cases, you might encounter working, for example, with Playwright and C#, but again, most of the companies will be using JavaScript. So, I will recommend you to pick JavaScript as your main programming language. Try to learn all the concepts of JavaScript and programming in general. And also try to dive a little bit deep into maybe some frameworks such as React or Vue, because there will be some cases where you will be able to actually write your code into front end, where you can add your own data test IDs or data CIs into the front end framework. In that case, it's very good if you understand, for example, React or Vue or maybe Angular, and you will be able to actually write them yourself and not bother developers. This will bring you a lot of extra points during the interview. So again, try to focus on JavaScript, some JavaScript frameworks, and try to learn it properly. And try to focus on stuff like core concepts and clean code, because everyone wants to see clean code. So good architecture, good naming, good code structure, not much duplicity. You know, if you see something where you can do some optimization, do it and showcase it in the interview, because you will not believe it, but not many testers, even on senior levels, can actually write solid clean code. So if you focus on that and practice it a lot, you will gain a huge advantage to the other competitors for your role. So yeah, try to take a look at these topics, and the golden rule is practice, practice, and again, practice programming. Next, let's talk about automation. First important topic is tools and frameworks. And I believe many of you will be working especially with web automation frameworks. I think two of the most popular frameworks right now are Playwright and Cypress. Of course, there are some other alternatives such as WebDriver.io, Selenium, TestCafe, or even Puppeteer. But most of the companies will be using Playwright or Cypress. So my recommendation is to pick both of these and try not to pick one. It's not good to take only Cypress or only Playwright. You should be able to be working proficiently in both of these frameworks. But if I have to pick one, it would be Playwright. I think many of the companies are adapting Playwright more than Cypress, and Cypress is not something a lot of companies are pushing right now. It was a very good framework back like 2 or 3 years ago. It was a good alternative to Selenium, but right now Playwright is kinda taking the spot. So try to focus on these two frameworks. Next, if you have some performance abilities, then I should recommend you to take a look at K6 or JMeter. If you have, for example, mobile ambitions, you should take a look at Appium. And also I have mentioned Selenium here because some of the large corporations will still be probably using Selenium. So in that case, try to take a look at it. And what's the most important part you should learn about these frameworks? Well, it's typically, for example, the patterns and architecture. Page objects pattern is very common, especially for the tools such as Playwright or Selenium. And app actions pattern is very popular, especially for the Cypress. But you should understand both of these architectures. Next is code performance, because you should be able to optimize your test code, reduce the execution time of your tests, etc. So it's very important to also think about how you write your code, how you structure your tests, and this will have a big impact on the complete performance. And if you can showcase these skills during the interview, that you already know about that and that you can think about the code and code performance, then you will get a lot of bonus points during the interviews, because trust me, not many people are thinking about it. They will try to convince the recruiter that yes, I understand these patterns, I know what page object is, but if you ask them about performance, they will be struggling and they will be not understanding that correctly. So if I can give you my best tips, try to learn Playwright and Cypress and focus on page objects pattern, app actions pattern, and code performance. Final piece of the puzzle is databases and API. Well, as a test automation engineer, you should be able to be working with APIs, especially with the REST API and tools such as Postman. So I recommend you to take a look at some of the tutorials on how to handle the API requests, understand the difference between GET, POST, for example, the authorization, tokens, etc. And again, you don't need to dive too deep into that, but at least on the basics level, you should be able to handle some basic requests, write some basic assertions, and showcase that you understand how REST API works. Next is working with databases. Again, you should be able to do some basic SQL queries. Again, it doesn't need to be super deep. You will probably not be working with some large joins, etc. But you should be able to handle databases pretty well. So spend some time working with SQL queries and try to learn differences between, for example, SQL and non-SQL. Again, try to do it at least on the basic level. It will give you a lot of bonus points during the interview. And at last, we have CI and CD. For example, the pipelines such as Jenkins or Travis CI. Again, this is a topic which you will be working a lot as a tester or test automation engineer. So again, try to pick one or two tools. Again, it can be Jenkins. A lot of companies are using Jenkins. And try some, maybe one modern like Circle CI. Try to learn it. So you should be able to set up some pipelines, modify some existing pipelines, run some tests in them, etc. Again, these are very important topics. And if you put together all the knowledge we have just talked here, you put some extra hours to practice it, to learn everything, at least on the basic level, then you will have no problem to acing any of the interviews for your tester or test automation role. And this is it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me or write me a message. I will try to give you an answer. For example, if you struggle with some ideas on how to take an approach on the learning or which topics you are probably missing from your learning syllabus, I will try to help you and we will fill your missing pieces. Don't worry, just feel free to write me anytime. I will be happy to provide you with some guidance. And I think that's all from my side, and good luck in your next test automation or QA interview.